I met my girlfriend at a party one night. She seemed like a total daredevil type of chick who grabbed life by the horns. The night I met her, she jumped off of the roof of the house into the pool. This instantly caught my attention and I was immediately attracted to her. I quickly took my shot and started talking to her. We got along really well right off the bat and things started heating up quickly in no time. We would go on adventures all the time and it was great, until it wasn't. We've been together for 8 months at this point when I started questioning what was really going on. There were multiple times when we went on an adventure and I felt like she almost got me killed. At first, I thought I was being paranoid, but over time, it became more of an occurrence on her part. For example, we went hiking on a rocky and dangerous trail with a huge drop-off. If anyone fell off of the side, they'd definitely be toast. At one point, when I was making it across, she ran up and tried to push me. Thankfully, I saw her in the corner of my eye and ducked so that she'd miss, but I was shocked. She started laughing and acting like it was a huge joke. I was genuinely terrified, but I moved past it because I thought she had a dark, twisted sense of humor. There's no way she'd actually try to push me, right? Well, my theory was definitely solidified when we went hunting together. She has expertise in this area as she grew up doing it, but I've only been a few times. At one point, she literally aimed the rifle at me from afar. When I yelled at her to stop and started freaking out, she had the craziest smile I've ever seen on her face. It was almost like a switch flipped. I really thought she was going to go through with it until another hunter in the area heard me yelling and came to see what was up. When she realized someone else was around, she quickly changed her aim and once again laughed it off like it was a big joke. After this, I knew I needed to get away from her and end the relationship. However, most of my things were still at her apartment and I didn't know how to go about it because at this point, I wasn't sure what she'd do. Part 2, I think my girlfriend is trying to unalive me. I borrowed her apartment key while she was at work and quickly grabbed all my things, including my laptop that I had let her use for school. When I got on it, I was shocked at what I found. There were a bunch of websites I didn't recognize, but after visiting them, I was terrified. She had frequented websites that included a lot of gore and death. From what I could tell, she was particularly interested in acts of torture and so on. She had even Googled different ways to make unaliving someone look like a complete accident. Additionally, there were also Google searches for how to fake certain emotions and empathy. Shortly after going through all of this, I got a text from her asking where I was and why I had taken all my things. I wasn't sure if I should go all in about the things I thought or if I should play it cool. I had a bad feeling that this girl was dangerous and I didn't want to just let her think that she was safe to keep doing these things. I confronted her and told her about everything I found. I also told her what I think she's been doing in our relationship. At first, she tried to defend herself and once again act like it was all a joke. However, when she realized I wasn't buying it, she got angry. That's when she started spewing threats and told me that she should have pushed me off of the cliff on our hike. After this, I started ignoring her texts, but she kept blowing me up. Her texts were getting even more aggressive. I decided I'd deal with it the next day and went to bed. However, at 2 a.m. I heard banging on my apartment door. I could tell that it was her. I could hear her angered breathing behind the door and she wasn't leaving. I called the police and had her arrested for harassment. That's when I also made a police report about everything I had found and turned it over to the police. The last time I saw her was when I was granted a restraining order against her in court because she started stalking me. The judge also sentenced her to mandatory therapy after all the evidence was brought forth. Ever since then, I've moved far away and I always watch my back. I've been dating my boyfriend for a year. We matched on Tinder originally and he sparked up a conversation with me about my career field, which is in the funeral business. I'm a licensed cosmetologist who prepares deceased people for their funerals. It might sound weird to some, but I enjoy my job and it brings me joy to see the family's reactions to my work. It also doesn't bother me to do makeup on deceased people. My boyfriend's always been supportive and interested in my career. I always thought he was just a sweet and supportive person. We would always talk about my job and my clients. He always asked me specific questions about how people look and what it's like when I'm touching them or doing work on them. I was always happy to answer his questions and talk about my work with him because it was nice to have someone who was genuinely interested. I also have a portfolio with before and after pictures of work I've done on my deceased clients with their family's permission, of course. My boyfriend asked to see these pictures, but I never showed him or anyone else besides potential employers because I felt that 1, it was disrespectful to the memory of the person and their family, and 2, because it was unprofessional to do so. Originally, my boyfriend respected me when I told him my reasoning as to why I wouldn't show him, but over time he's gotten more and more agitated about it. It slowly came up more often and it was starting to make me question why he gets so upset over this. However, a month ago, he stopped bringing it up and asking about it. One day, when he was sleeping and his phone was out, I had the craziest gut feeling to go through it. I had never done it before, but I couldn't shake this feeling. I finally gave in and checked his photo album. I was shocked to find that he had gone through my portfolio and snapped pictures of it. I woke him up in anger and confronted him. This is when he broke down and admitted that he was into necrophilia. Things only went downhill from here. Part 2, I found out my boyfriend is into necrophilia. When my boyfriend broke down and admitted it, I was shocked. Everything from our first conversation up until finding the pictures on his phone all made sense in a different light. He explained that me being a mortuary cosmetologist is what drew him to me in the first place. All the conversations we had about my job and experiences further fueled his fantasies and made it all more realistic. He also enjoyed that I didn't mind being around deceased people. He admitted that he thought eventually he might be able to get me to roleplay in the bedroom with him and give him a realistic taste of what it would really be like. As he said all of this, I could see and feel the excitement slowly radiating off of him. I'm not one to shame people for what they're into, but this just creeped me out. I think he could see the terror on my face because he quickly tried to change the topic. However, it was too late. Knowing all of this knowledge now, I couldn't turn a blind eye and it wasn't something that I could accept. I grabbed his phone and wiped the pictures. Then I told him that I needed the next few days to myself. He gathered his things and left. However, he spent the next few days blowing up my phone with apologies. They started out sincere at first, but when I didn't reply, they got more aggressive. He tried to shame me for not being an open-minded person and accepting of his interest. By the end of the week, I told him our relationship was over and his actions were unforgivable. He continued to pester me for a while after that, but eventually backed off when I threatened to out him to his friends and family if he didn't leave me alone. Storytime about how my sister and I got stranded in the middle of a lake. My dad was really sick from short bowel syndrome and was going to be in the hospital for a long time. One summer, he was having surgery, so my sister and I went to stay with our grandparents. They lived near a lake and we'd always go tubing with my grandpa. One morning, he asked my sister and I if we wanted to go on the boat. On the way there, he warned us that the currents would be a lot stronger than what we were used to, but my sister and I would swim all the time, so we weren't too worried. When we got there, we would always go to the beach area first to swim, and then we would go to the middle of the lake to tube and swim in the deeper parts. The currents ended up being stronger than what we thought, but it wasn't really concerning, so we put the anchor down in the middle of the lake and started having a great time. This is when my grandpa decided to jump into the water too. However, instead of jumping off at the front of the boat like my sister and I were doing, he jumped off at the back and the current started to pull him away. My sister immediately jumped into the water with a rope to try and get him, but he had already drifted away. I tried to flag down other boats for help, but it took about 15 to 20 minutes before anyone came by. Thankfully, this man and his son came to our rescue. The son got on our boat to try and get us back to the docks while his dad looked for our grandpa. Later, we found out that our grandpa had died from a heart attack in the water and there was nothing we could have done. Our grandma couldn't have us around afterwards since she was going through the loss of our grandpa. We ended up staying with some random family members that we didn't even know. It was all unexpected and our dad was the most broken up about it since he couldn't attend the funeral. It took a long time for my grandma to heal, but the funeral was beautiful and we were really thankful to those kind people who helped us on the lake that day. My mom has been sick my entire life. She had gestational diabetes that turned into full-blown diabetes, end-stage renal failure, and a bunch of other things. A number of years ago, she received a kidney and it rejected about a year ago. Ever since I had my daughter, she's been pushing me to answer her on donating a kidney so that she can get one in return. If I donate one, she gets one. Pregnancy was difficult on me and I'm still trying to decide if I want one more. In fact, ever since I had my daughter, I've had a crippling fear of death and a near crippling existential crisis daily. The problem is my mom's been smoking for over 40 years. She also has a host of problems induced by poor life choices from unresolved trauma and drug use. I don't want to put my body through the trauma of organ donation, knowing her body may reject the organ again for her only to receive another 5 years. I want to live as long as possible for my daughter. Furthermore, since hypertension runs in my family, I'm afraid one day I'll need an organ transplant. The American medical system is less than reliable, and I don't anticipate that if that time comes, I'll get the help that I need. Now my mom is texting me about how the kidney transplant list is 10 to 12 years long and asking how she could be there for her granddaughter without a kidney. Even if she were to get a new kidney, I don't expect her lifestyle choices to change. Honestly, my fear is that I'll put my body through this organ donation and she'll either die from lung cancer or her body won't be able to handle the trauma of another transplant. I hate to put it this way, but I feel like my mom squandered her first transplant. She made 0 life changes, still smoked, ate terribly, and never exercised. I'm afraid she'll end up doing the same thing at my cost this time. I feel that if I don't donate of my own free will, I would be doing it out of obligation and would be resentful because my mom would not change her lifestyle. However, I fear if I tell her no, she'd be resentful of me. I don't know what to do or say.
When getting married, they say death do us part. It should be taken literally, but some of us don't take this statement serious enough because a Vietnamese man slept beside his dead wife for 16 years. In 2009, the shocking story of the man who dug up the remains of his late wife has been sleeping in the same bed with her for the past 5 years shook the internet. Many thought that the story was false, as his way of giving grief is quite unusual, but fast forward to 2020, and the man identified as Lee Van continues to sleep in the same bed with the wife's remains. It was said that before he decided to take her home, he dug a tunnel to her grave to sleep in the grave with her for 20 months. You'd think that by now the corpse body would look like dust and smell badly, but I'll get into how he reserved her body in the next part. I told the man that slept with his dead wife for 16 years. The 55-year-old man, Lee Van, is from a small town in Central Province in Quang Nam, opened up his wife's grave in 2004. He molded clay around the remains to give the figure of a woman, put clothes on her, and then placed her in his bed. He made it clear that he has no intentions to let go of his wife, who he married in 1975. It was reported that the duo's marriage was arranged by their parents, and at the time they married, they hardly knew each other, let alone shared a romantic feelings towards each other. They married shortly after Lee Van got back from the military, but they soon fell in love and had 7 children. Van's wife is said to have suddenly died in 2003 upon hearing the news. Van rushed home and barely got to see his spouse's face for a few minutes before she was buried. The grieving husband was so shocked by his wife's death that he spent most of his time night and day at the cemetery. He slept on his wife's grave. But after a few months, he worried about the weather and wanted to keep the body safe with him. Part 3 of the man that slept beside his dead wife for 16 years. This man literally dug up his wife's corpse body and still to this day sleeps with it. His concerned children found out about his sleeping place and stopped him from sleeping his nights at the cemetery. It was at this point where he decided to bring his wife home with him. He could no longer sleep next to her in the cemetery. Unable to let go of his beloved, he dug up her bones and placed them in a bag near the cemetery. Then he started making a hollow statue in the shape of a woman out of plaster, cement, glue, and sand and put his wife's remains inside. He placed a hollow statue on his bed and laid next to it. And he's been doing the same thing every night for the last 16 years. If you guys want to see images of the wife's body, please let me know down below in the comments if you really want to see those images.